Hey everyone, I'm Wa.
And I'm Chris, and welcome to Sweeties.
We're two longtime friends who discuss the riveting and sometimes trashy world of reality TV and docuseries.
Yes, but through our own lens, which, can be Sundays and it can also be Mondays, but it can also be Taco Tuesdays and it can also be Happy Hour Thursdays, but at the end of the day, hopefully mildly sweet, like a staycation. And listen, staycation is a thing I love and also a thing that Robert Durst loves. This is the episode where we talk about staycations and the specific staycation that he thought that he was going to do with Susan Berman, which was the Catalina Disneyland staycation that adults usually love, the childless adults that are into Coke love in Southern California, a Catalina Disneyland staycation, you know?
Have you been to Catalina Island?
Yes, I have. I've been there once, and my mom ended up marrying some dude that I met him like when they were fiancés once, and that was the first time I met him, and he was a weird person, but he had a boat, and they put me on the boat and took me to Catalina. I threw up all over that boat, so I have weird thoughts of Catalina as being just a very awkward place where I feel uncomfortable, But I think that it has nothing to do with Catalina and everything to do with my childhood. Anyway.
Oh yeah, I've never been. I know people went during school a lot, like it was one of those trips. But that skipped me somehow. But I've heard of people going to it and they're like, oh no, I went. Yeah, it's nice, and I'm like, it's just so far out of my zeitgeist. But it's a thing. There's an island off of Southern California called Catalina Island that people go to, and it is just outside of my LA experience. Weird. Okay. Um, Yes, and then the Disneyland portion of it. What do you mean by that? Is there Disneyland on Catalina Island? No, right?
Not at all.
Oh.
So it was just he put those two things together as being what two again childless adults that for we know like Coke, we think that they're gonna go to Disneyland and Catalina together. Like Disneyland is not like a Coke person's park. Like if you're an adult and you're on drugs and you're at Disneyland, you're on gummies, you're on shrooms, or you're on weed gummies. No one like wants to do Coke and go to Disneyland, especially like not New Yorkers. I mean, I'm sorry, come for me if I'm wrong. But it's just like when he said that that was what the plans were, I was like, huh, this fucking
Yeah,
liar.
I didn't understand what the connection was. And so I thought maybe you did, and I was just like, what is happening? I don't know. But yeah, no, I didn't
Well,
understand the connection at all. It was just such a weird thing to say.
yes, yes. As if he Googled like what staycation. It's as if you Googled staycations in Southern California, like Disneyland, Catalina, San Diego. I mean, I don't know. It's hilarious. But let's start. So episode 5. Now we episode 4 had Emily admitting on the stage. Sorry, on the stand. Forgot where we were. On the stand that Bob was in LA during December of whatever year it was, and that is crux to the prosecution. And after that, then the defense has to backpedal and change in order to, I guess, be aware of that or whatever, like account for that. So, and the way they do that is two major things. One is that Bob changes his story and says that yes, he wrote the cadaver note. And now, B, two, he needs to testify to explain how and why that came. A, because back in the day, he had pretty much said that whoever wrote the cadaver note was probably the killer, definitely there at the time. And now that's him. And obviously, we've already been knowing it's him because he has the weird, horrible handwriting and he can't spell Beverly, for how rich he is, but he
Mhm,
cannot,
mhm,
so
mhm.
many E's in that Beverly, honey. He was like, is it Beverly spelled Beverley? I mean,
Mhm,
like,
mhm, 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 mhm. Um, just to catch the audience up on what's happening, we were talking about the Jinx, the life and deaths of Robert Durst, season
oh
2,
no.
episode 5, mostly the truth. And this mostly the truth is a hilarious statement. Like I think I have a very black and white idea of like what a lie is, but I've also had to change that because of just like work and stuff like that. That there are people who operate in the gray, and yeah, when something can be mostly the truth, I'm like, well, it's still part lie, which is the red in the in the book. So yeah, we've got the since 10th grade friend Stewart's wife Emily on the stand, and she has placed Robert Durst in LA when Robert said, or Bob said, he was in San Francisco. So he could not have killed Susan Berman because he was in San Francisco. And Emily says, no, he was in Los Angeles. And that opened up the can of worms for John Lewin to go hamburglar. So the defense decides, well, since there's a character witness and we don't have any evidence to prove otherwise, we can't just say, well, she's lying. Especially because the judge keeps overruling every objection the defense makes. They were like, all right, Bob, I think we got to go with, were you in Los Angeles? And Bob's like, yes. So now they've changed the whole story to Bob being in Los Angeles. He's admitted to that. And he admitted to writing the cadaver note, which is the note that blows everything up with the word Beverly, as Chris explained. So yeah, this is just like a tangled web. And you tell lies, but then you've got to like untell the lie in order to move forward. And it just,
yeah. We pick up on we are now in Kathy Durst's childhood home, and we're going to go between two sets of footage. One was 16 years prior, where her mom is still alive, and we're talking to her brother, and then 16 years later we see the brother, who's obviously aged, and the mom is no longer with us. The brother, so Kathy Durst's mom is Anne McCormick, and then 16 years later we're also talking, and we see him before as Jim McCormick, and Jim has picked up the fight for justice for his sister in lieu of the fact that Kathy never got any sort of justice. And so I also want to say something. Jim Llewellyn is the DA that's been talking to us the entire time. Parts of John are so casual in the way that he's dressed that in the first episodes, I think that I referred to him as the detective for some reason, because he was so he talked with his hands so much, and he was so casual that I thought that he was for some reason the guy that had like put the things together, but I realized no, that's just his demeanor, and he's actually a lawyer. I know that sounds crazy, but I had made that mistake.
I thought he was a detective too, but it's not because of the way he looked, it's just because of the way they said it. It was like he opens cold cases, which made me think that he was a detective. Like I didn't know that there was a prosecutor, a branch in the prosecution that, or the DA that had a lawyer just look at old cold cases. So that's weird. That sounds like a very detective thing to do. Also, you want to realize that Jim McCormick and Anne McCormick are, in the words of Susan Berman, the like trashy, drunk Catholic Irish people.
I'm so sorry.
And it's like,
they're not, but it's
not. She is such a like, I just, listen, I love elitism. Okay?
oh.
I don't love it. Let me not say that. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it because I think that I cannot say that if my life were different and I were raised in Bob Durst's position, or I was raised with a silver spoon or something like that, like I didn't have to worry about any kind of money, I cannot say that I wouldn't be a slight monster. Okay. Just knowing myself as a poor monster. Right. So like, I can't say it, but I just am like the xenophobia in the white community sometimes is just so baffling to me. And I'm like, if, as a Black person, like who would I be hating on? Like, is there a contingency of like upper crusty Black people who don't like African immigrants or don't
sure. Well,
don't like whatever, to the point where you're gonna be in a phone conversation with a journalist and be like, well, they're not even good, they're just like trashy, like they're all their women are married to firemen, as though being a fireman is not an honorable job.
I mean, I know it. Also Susan Berman is Jewish, and so she's like, so like she's hating on Irish. It's just everything seems like so stereotypical New York, gangs of New York from like.
But she's not even New York. She is from Las Vegas. Like,
You're right, of
And
course.
she's like to me Italian adjacent. Like, I mean, I know there must be like Jewish people in the mob, but like who built
The
LV
Jew,
is
his name is they gave him all
his name
the
was
Jew.
AKA the Jew because he was about around a bunch of Italians. So it's just like this weird thing. But anyways, just so you guys are aware, that's who the McCormicks are. They are a lovely bunch of people from what we could see, and they have been fighting for justice for the daughter slash sister for since 1982 for years, for years.
Absolutely. So let's jump back into the trial. The trial, of course, is happening, and we have a decrepit Robert Durst. And one other thing about what's going to happen next is that he is reading from a teleprompter what the person is saying. Like, this is in the middle of COVID. So he has a shield on his face and he has a mask on. He's reading from a teleprompter. Now, that's also interesting to me because I'm like, you can't just, it's not enough that you're giving him like an earbud or something. He needs to be able to also read, like what's like translating whatever for the question, so from a device, and so he now, I said, has to testify now. Obs, the way that this shit goes is that the defense has their first crack at him as the final witness, and so of course we have Dick DeGuerin, who is the Texas defense attorney that also represented him for the Galveston murder that obviously he got off of and it was 15, 16 years ago. So anyway, they softball him questions. So what was it like? What are your earliest memories? And Robert Durst was like, well, I always loved my mom, and my dad I try to get along with. Oh, I just remember it was always Daddy and Douglas, my brother. He ends up having four siblings, but he was the first, and he was mad anyone else came. It was Daddy and Douglas versus Mommy and me. We played Uno and Frisbee. I remember, just like, okay, so they start to paint the picture of his childhood, which is that he's disgruntled at the fact that he has to share any attention with his siblings. Basically, his dad isn't really there that much. Obviously, a working man, probably traveling, who knows where the fuck he's in and out. Later on, Douglas will refer to him as like a duke, like a visiting duke, which I thought was so interesting to say, like,
Yeah.
but he's very close to his mom. Then when Robert Durst is, I think, 7 or 12, for some reason I can't remember exactly, his mother commits suicide, or is murdered. But the way that it happens is that he sees her on the rooftop, and then he sees her full on fallen body on the concrete. And this is supposed to, of course, like fundamentally change him for the worse or whatever. But
Hmm.
the truth of the matter is, I don't know if that's true, because people unfortunately have to deal with dead parents all the time. They don't usually kill 3 other people. So then, we're obviously, that's what's happening in the trial. And then during, like, after the trial that night or whatever, they kind of intersperse the phone calls between Bob and the people that he talks to. And at this point, it's a lot of his wife, Debbie, and he begs Debbie to come to the trial. Because she calls him every day. She's like, "Hi, Bob, how'd it go today?" And he's like, "Well, Debbie, I think it went well, but I'd love to see you." And she's like, I
Mm-mm.
don't want, not only don't think it's a good idea, absolutely don't want to. But
Mm-mm.
don't need to either, because I've been having my own lawyer there. And
Hmm.
even though I asked you how to go today, I've been fucking knowing, because he
Hmm.
texts me throughout the trial all the time. And Andrew Jarecki like shows a clip of this person, and weirdly enough, Andrew Jarecki then talks to the New York reporter, the same guy that during the era of Jinx season 1 would talk to Robert Durst after each episode, and then thusly realized when he was caught saying killed them all, of course he stopped talking to him, to name Debbie's lawyer. And he won't even utter his name, which in itself is like, who the fuck is that guy? Like, why won't you say his name? What are you trying to, like, that's wild to me. But his name is Alan Abramson. I'm so sorry, I have such an auditory problem. Alan Abramson, something like that. So then we get to the famous staycation part. Do you want to talk about it?
No, we talk about it.
Okay. Well, basically,
We're supposed.
Robert? Well, that's what. No, so Robert obviously has to talk about why he went to
Yeah,
California. That's
because
why.
he went to California and he was supposed to go on a staycation. They were Bob and Susan were supposed to meet up for a staycation and do Catalina Island in Disneyland. Could you imagine these two senior citizens just traipsing? Because Disneyland and Catalina Island, as far as I know, are not next to each other. Disneyland is fully landlocked. Disneyland is fully in the land. It is fully inland. You know what I mean? It's not close to the beach. It's not on the beach. It's not by the beach. It's not adjacent to the beach. It's not the beach. Okay. It is in a very dense Buena Park, heavily. There's two amusement parks in that area. In fact, whenever you think of going to Disneyland, you're like, oh, God, I gotta get in this traffic. Oh God. Ugh. And there's also knots. Like, it's just like a whole thing. And then after that, they're gonna go to Catalina Island. This sounds really weird. These two senior citizens just bouncing from here to there and doing whatever. And so like I think it's so interesting that I mean, to be John Lewin in this moment, this is some of the best, like, I think, study in prosecution and how you do stuff, because there's going to be a point after this where and this is where I love investigative stuff, because all you do is let someone talk to you and then you just write down all the facts, all the things that they say, and then you got to cross reference those things, and that's where things get fun. So we like mommy and Douglas, or daddy and Douglas is like, it was so annoying. I like walked away from the TV when that was happening. And so we do get a Robert Durst who is acting so decrepit and sick. Like, he just refuses to clear his throat. So he consistently has a frog in his throat whenever he's speaking on the stand. But when he's like talking to his like friends at home or from the jail, he has a different voice. Mm-hmm. It's like he allows his morning voice to like, yeah. And then he's like, "Hey, it's Bob. I'm fine. Everything's great. Mm-hmm. This is what the lawyers are doing." Mm-hmm. It's such a different thing. So John then starts to prep for his cross examination, and it ends up lasting for 9 days. 9 days of a prosecution, which is so long. And so one of the first things that John says to him is, "Oh, you mentioned that you and your family would play Uno together, huh?" Cool.
Yeah, I do remember Uno.
So, did you know that Uno was invented in 1975? So what year do you think that you and Dad and your family was playing Uno?
Oh, 1976.
No. This man fully got on there and made it seem like he had Uno in his childhood when he was a good goddamn 45 years old when Uno came out. Like, he was not sitting around. His mother had been died before Uno was invented.
And Frisbee.
And Frisbee. Like, he lied so much about the childhood. So John Lewin fully just blew up that whole "we were a happy family" bullshit, and we used to hang out together, Daddy and Douglas, me and Mommy. He blew that whole shit apart. Just lie after lie after lie, and to the point where the judge is like, "We get it, he's a liar. Okay, he's a liar, John. We get it. He is a liar. This 9 days of this cross-examination can't happen. I'm cutting it short right now. Jury, do you have enough evidence to show that he's a liar?" Jury's like, "Yeah."
The judge in himself is just funny. Yeah, before he even, right when he's about to start cross-examination, John has the biggest boner of his whole life, because he's been prepping for this, and he's just like, "I might have a few questions." The fact that he said, "I might have a few questions," to now know that he wanted to and would have gone longer than 9 days of cross-examination is the LOLiest. And the Mark, who's the judge, is like, breathe, because you could just assume that he was like, And he was just like, take a moment, why don't you say, the fact that the judge was like, hey, why don't you just settle in first? Just settle in. Just don't even, before you even ask one question, just take account of your surroundings. It's such a funny thing to say to a grown ass person who's like the DA of like Los Angeles. Like,
I love
that's
it.
something, it's something your therapist would say to you, that if you walked in and your therapist knew that you had confronted your boss or your lover and you came and sat down and you were like, hi, and they were like, oh, okay, I know we have a big day ahead of us. I know, honey, we're good. Just like, that's the kind of like thing, that the energy that it brought, that was so funny. But yeah, obviously the lies start small, and the fact that that was true. But he goes on to say, how did you feel when Nick Shaven came up here, or Nick, whatever his name is, the nude porn cowboy, and said that you had done an admission? He was like, I don't like Nick. Nick's never been my best friend. He's like, okay, was Susan Berman your best friend? Yes.
Nick has never been my best friend is like the rudest thing. And Nick had to like watch that. And he's like, that's crazy. I'm sorry. We've been best friends for the better part of 30 years. And now you're saying that he's never been your best friend. That's crazy. That's crazy.
But truth be said, Robert Durst had a lot of best friends. Susan Berman, best friend. Sam Altman, best friend. Emily Altman, best friend. Debbie, whatever you're going to think Debbie is. So yeah, and then basically the whole staycation Disneyland thing, which is the funniest thing, ends up having a great refute in Susan's day planner. Now, Susan's who will be described as later by Debbie as manic. And we kind of got a taste of that energy on that phone call. Had a day planner where she would just write down all of her things, circle them, and put Post-its on top of them. Now, I'll tell you this right now. That day planner and that behavior is something I've witnessed before. My mom used to do that too, like where there was like the day planner. This is before devices. The way that a generation of people in front and dealt with their day planning before devices and like the organization of their day is so interesting to me. But anyway, Susan
I used to
had,
do that.
yeah,
I had a very intense day planner like in my early 20s, and I loved it. And I felt so like good checking stuff off. And now I can't do it. It's weird. I have a planner right here that I keep looking at, and I keep wanting to write in it and say like, okay, these are the things I'm going to get done today, and like write it in and all that. But I'm just like, meh. But yeah, I used to live and die by my day planner. If it wasn't in there, I would forget things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's pretty much my iCal now. I'm so old, I call it iCal. I mean, I try and do things in my calendar now because that's the same thing. But so in Susan's day planner, obviously, this is the middle of like Christmas. I mean, not that they celebrate, but it's like 22, 28. She has a whole bunch of, guess who didn't stay focused though? Not enough to write in it. I like the fact that it's June. So my mind, she bought that January, and it's just been sitting blank for 6 months.
Oh no, I bought it last year. This is part of the Tabitha Brown collection, her first drop with Target. So whenever that's when I bought this. And it doesn't have any dates in it, so I can always just pick it up and start using it because you add the dates and everything in it yourself. So yeah.
Thank you, Tabs. Nappy Tabs? No, I'm just kidding. Remember Nappy Tabs? Anyway, so you're thinking, man, it's a different world. So obviously that day planner has everything in it, including all her meetings, and not one of those meetings happened A, at Disneyland, or B, with Robert Durst, or C, in Catalina. Not one of them. She doesn't have, there's no blackout saying this, and those are whole day events. I mean, Catalina you have to get to. Listen, he probably was going to hire, I mean, I'm assuming that if he's rich, like you would just do like the helicopter thing, unless you really wanted to do the Catalina Flyer, which by the way goes out of Long Beach or Newport Beach, right by my house. And also then I thought Disneyland, the way to do Disneyland is like either the normal way, which is like you just go, but for very, very expensive, rich people, you get like a personal valet, and that guy takes you around. You don't have to wait on rides. So in my mind, I'm like, what was he going to do? Anyway, God bless.
Does the valet drive you around in a little golf cart?
It can. Oh. No, actually, I don't think they can.
Oh, okay. Because I'm like, that's the only way. Otherwise,
I like getting my steps. It's one of the reasons why I like going.
Okay.
But I don't like waiting on rides. So then the prosecution team's like, get that fucking planner, and they get the planner. They're like going to go through the planner, but John's just like, give it to me right now. Like, this is the kind of stuff that this of course could be like a film. This is what's so fascinating. And by the way, at the end of this trial, I'm like, God, I wish I was a lawyer. Anyway, he's like, Here's her fucking day planner. Not once does it mention you. She didn't know you were coming. Later on in the week, on the 28th, it says call Bobby. And guess you can't call someone who's in front of you. You're not gonna like be like, I'm gonna write my day planner. Call Bobby's name from one room and get him from the other room. That's not what you fucking do. Call because you didn't know you were gonna be here. So anyway, he's like, okay. That's one thing. And then, yeah, one thing about the fact the defense team, again, are two guys from different fucking states. Okay. So one is a Texas lawyer and one is a Vegas lawyer. And we're in where? California.
Mm-hmm.
So not only that, the Vegas lawyer, obviously, again, is like a little whack-a-mole, just keeps standing up and like overruling. And one other thing is that they are not allowed to have objection. Sorry, I don't want to say this wrong, but it seems like you cannot object to things unless you'd state the penal code that it is against in order to reference why you want to object it, which is probably a way to get dumb people from just objecting for no reason, just to stop the trial or get people to think that something's wrong happened. It's like, well, no, if you object, tell me why, on what basis. You can't just say object and be like, I don't like it. Object because of penal code 34. You can't blah, blah, blah. I'm so again, they're not doing any of the backups, which is why Dick is annoyed that that's even a California thing. During the trial, he is, lying and he obviously gets off footing a lot. And later on says that he doesn't know nor would have any information on and didn't say anything about where Kathy was buried. Now, first of all, she's only missing. We don't even know where she is or that she would be buried. It's something that only the killer. It's like giving up information that no one was given to you. So the fact that she's buried was just like that he said that was just really telling. And then it gets to this place where he breaks him down to pretty much say that he would lie to save his ass. That he would lie if he did it. And he has lied on the stand, but it's not a problem because he's only been lying to him and it's about inconsequential things. It's because Robert Durst is a narcissist and extremely fucked up. And it's like Joe, after days, got him to his core admit the truths of how fucked up his mind is. Like, we're supposed to believe you. You just admitted to us that you would lie and you've been lying. And the only way to, the only thing you're giving us is that you have your own moral compass and we're supposed to believe you in the fact that if you're lying, it's only mediocre and it's only for small things. And if you're telling the truth, those are the big things. And we're just supposed to die on the hill of of what you're saying, which is a narcissistic thing to say because it makes us, the audience, not be able to like trust our own eyes and ears, and it's like, no, we're going to trust our own eyes and ears over your perception. It's very interesting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it is really interesting. It's like he does a lot of backpedaling and whatnot, but he really feels like if he tells the truth about his partial lies, that the jury will go, oh, well, at least he's truthful in his partial lies, so we have to trust him, because
Yes.
it's so confusing and crazy that he would tell the truth about this, which means that it must be true. No, that's not the way that things work. I don't know what year you think it is, but it is not that year where that makes sense to anyone. It's like he also doesn't realize that like the jury is not made up of like rich white men, the same of his peers who would understand that even line of thinking. It's a very weird like line of thinking that he would think other people would kind of go along with. I mean, at this point though, he is just like, what is he going to do? His lawyers suck. He made a choice to go with some old people who don't know how to do anything. And they really do him a grand disservice. They are unorganized. They don't do their research. They are often fumbling around. So it was like pretty easy for John Lewin to come in and do what he did because the defense was so bad. And
remarkably.
I think at some point Bob realized that they were so bad. So he was trying to like deal with it himself. That's what it felt like to me, that he was trying to deal with it himself. Like So John is like, okay, so the cadaver note, you obviously admit that you wrote that, and obviously and then you did tell us that whoever wrote the cadaver note must have killed her. Two, then we've got the whole like buried. Nobody said anything about her being buried, and I'm like, can they not ask him where she's buried, or like, hey, the jig is up. If you were to have buried her, where would you done that, so that they could at least find her, because it's clear that he buried her. And then we're going to get some more evidence about muddy boots, I think, in the next episode, that kind of link the burial situation to that. I don't know if is it in this episode or the next episode where he talks about how he actually found Susan.
Next episode.
Okay, so I mean, it gets like deeper and
Wait.
deeper.
Maybe it is this episode. No, it isn't this episode. Sorry, this is yeah. They have to explain why he was there. Yeah, right.
So yeah, so he even admits that now he's in Los Angeles. So he tells the police that he's the one who, he tells on the stand that he's the one who found Susan. So now we have this whole other thing of him admitting that he found her, he saw her laying, and he described her body and how her body was laying in a way that only somebody who did see her would know that that's how she died. He described it exactly of how the police found her body. So, I mean, it's just so many things now where it shows that he's not to be trusted. So then the verdict comes through, but Bob can't come because he has COVID. And he is found guilty on all charges. And the McCormick family is super excited. I mean, everybody's so relieved and excited. And Bob doesn't know the verdict because he's ill at the jail. And he doesn't actually find out the verdict until the next day. And guess who tells him? Not his lawyers. His lawyers actually packed their shit up and went home. They did not even have the wherewithal, they actually scammed that man out of $12 million. It turns out that he paid them $12 million for what I can only imagine is the worst defense that anyone has ever seen, or one of the worst defenses that anyone has ever seen. They packed up, they went home, and how Bob found out is Debbie's lawyer, the one who'd been like hanging out in the courtroom every day, trying to figure out what came out and what didn't come out so that he could build his own case in case everything turned towards her, which makes us go, what the hell did Debbie do? How did she have anything to do with Susan's death? So like the lawyer then tells Bob, like, hey, just to let you know, you're found guilty on all charges and you're going to go to jail for the rest of your natural life. Okay. You okay? Okay. Bye. Like, that is a wild. And like, I don't feel bad for Bob, but I'm like, damn.
Yeah. This part is so wild. This is so wild. So yeah, so this part where Alan then gets interviewed and they're like, who told Bob about his thing as a guy did? And then he goes, okay, you of course can answer whatever you want, but just why did Debbie feel the need to retain a criminal defense lawyer? Or do you know why? Do you know why Debbie felt the need to retain a criminal defense lawyer to be at the trial? And then he goes, I know why she retained me. When he said that, I was like, oh, Jesus Christ. Like for some reason, him saying that to me, I was like, you've killed people, like this is so remarkable in so many ways, because Bob is very rich, and he gets two lawyers, like I've said, who don't practice California law. And he could have had a full-on defense team. He could have, he could have had more people,
For 12 million, yes, he could have.
Yes. And, like, it isn't like there's not good lawyers in California and LA, like, do this shit all the time. Like, I just am surprised. It just is wild to me how bad. And no one knows how bad the lawyer is more than Debbie. She's like, who fucking lost this case for you? It's that Dick. It's that Dick. Dick is just old. She was just like, you're so dumb. You just hired this decrepit man, honey. He's like, he's my age. He's like, yeah, and look at you. And look at you. And, right. Correct. And, like, he didn't know what the fuck he was doing. There's like moments where the docuseries shows us Dick fumbling with like an easel trying to
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
use like a piece of paper thrown over the back to like point out things. We're in the age of like, that's before PowerPoint, and now we're into like, I mean, we should have a fucking hologram, honey, for 12 million. You should have had a fucking hologram of the goddamn murderer. That's like, like you could have just had, then at the end, Michael Jackson comes out and sings a song, $12 million.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting because then immediately I was like, oh, well, you can appeal or say that you had a bad lawyer, And then another thing about them is I also blame Dick or someone for not making sure that Robert Durst didn't testify. But one reason why he did testify, A, because he had explained why he wrote the Susan Berman cadaver note, but also B, is he had testified, I think, in Galveston, and too much success, too much
Mhm.
fanfare. But that was a younger Robert Durst, and that was a younger Dick at the time. You know what I'm saying?
It's just crazy because I think there are a couple of professions in this world where you have to stay up with the times. And I feel like lawyering and doctoring are one of those two. That unfortunately, yes, you could be an older person who's been in the game and doing it longer, but if you don't stay up with the medical journals and the law and technology and certain things, you are at a loss, because if you're dealing with cases that have more modern issues and the way that we take in information now, the way that DNA works now, like there's just so many things that you have to get those young people in the room who know what's up in order to move forward. And I feel like this is a perfect case of lawyers lawyering past their time. Like they should not have been the ones to be at the forefront and really be asking those questions, because it's like it's like they wouldn't even think to look when Uno was made. And I'm not saying that John Lewin is super young, but I'm pretty sure that with those two twins on his team, they were probably like, Uno's that old? When was Uno made? You know what I mean? Like there's a part of you that there's a trigger that doesn't happen with certain people because of time and age. It happens to me now. Like I'm like, someone starts, I'm like, oh, I didn't even think of that. It's because I'm old. So not really. Look at the skin. But yeah, it's just so interesting that that is what happened to him. And it makes me mad that it didn't happen earlier, because he didn't this man lived a full life. Everybody's like, oh, we got to get some justice. I was like, no, we're about 15 to 20 years past justice. Like he still has lived his entire fucking whole life having committed at least 3 murders that we know of. Like, mm-mm. Like, no. He should not have had any fun from the year 2000 plus. Like, it's not fair. It's not fair. He's gotten away. He lived through he had the whole roaring 80s, and he had the whole 90s just cutting up after he done committed these crimes. Late 90s, early 2000s. I don't know. I don't feel like justice was served, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're married to a drunk Irish fireman almost.
Mm-hmm.
Because the big thing I'm trying to say is because the McCormick family probably also doesn't think justice was served, and then you
Yeah,
sound
yeah,
like you're
yeah.
from the McCormick. I don't know if that was clear the way I did that. Anyway, well, here we are. We have one more episode left of the Jinx, the life and deaths of Robert Durst, coming up at you. We're going to, now that we know he's guilty, we have to still sentence the man and tie up some loose ends, honey. And the loose ends are frayed. They're frayed edges. So we'll be doing that.
Why is it called the Jinx? Do you know?
They call him he's the Jinx.
Oh, I
I
didn't know
I
that.
don't know, I don't know why. I forgot
Okay.
why. Because of course Jinx is a thing where you say something at the same time.
Yeah.
Like 1, 2, 3 Jinx, but
Yeah, that's what I know that to be. So I was just wondering if
yeah,
they
it's a great
said it
question.
in the first season of it.
I'm trying to think if they did or something, and I just don't remember because again, it aired in like 2000, like whatever.
Hmm. All right, you guys. So if you want to see the visuals of what you're listening to, please join us on patreon.com/DocuSweeties for $10 a month. You get a live every first Monday of the month, plus other goodies. If you're interested in that, please join us on patreon.com/DocuSweeties for $10 a month. If you can't do that, Chris, we'll tell you how. Chris?
Yes, of course. Please go and follow us on social medias. We are at DocuSweeties on Instagram, at DocuSweeties on TikTok, at DocuSweeties1 on X. We have a Facebook group, the DocuSweeties Podcast Facebook group. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to our YouTube and give us a 5-star review. you. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you. Okay.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.